Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Through the Dust. It's been a while, but we're back, and I am working on my 300 here. Has some leaking fork seals, and we got a trip to Arkansas coming up next week. So just slap some new seals in, and gonna put the last tube in, and let's talk about some stuff. How this relates to what we're gonna talk about today. Stay tuned. Well, guys, I know it's been a while, and I apologize for that. There's a good reason. I have my preaching schedule had kind of expanded, and still has expanded, but the new has wore off, and I've found my rhythm in it. At first, I was a little overwhelmed. A couple of days ago, I was like, man, I really miss doing these devotionals. So we're back, and what I'm doing here on the 300 is, like I said, mentioned earlier, I had a leaking fork seal. Andrew and I went riding the other day, came back and noticed I had some fluid down here, and we're going to Arkansas next week for our 21-year anniversary trip. Andrew's first time in the mountains as well on a bike. And so I wanted to get seals put in and all this kind of stuff before we went. But I also I was already going to pull this tube off because about right after I got the bike, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, something like that, I put in the Race Tech spring on this side because 300Ls only have a spring on the other side. And I did the recommended number of preload washers, and it was a little stiff to me. A lot of people since then I've heard that they recommend to get a spring rate one size below your weight, and I didn't know that at the time. And so it was a little stiff, just a little bit on impact to some things. And so I was already in my head, I was like, when I get home, I think I'm going to pull a washer out, a couple of washers out, and see if I can soften it up. Well, when I got home and saw that, I said, well, that actually works out. We'll kill two birds with one stone. But this suspension here is pretty, it doesn't have the adjustable valves on top or anything like that. That's kind of what you got to do. You got to disassemble and remove washers and whatnot. On the back, I have the Cogent, I don't know how to say it, shock on the back, and you can adjust that one. But it got me thinking about something that I talk with a lot of people about. A lot of times when we talk about as Christians, one of the things that we know to do without a shadow of a doubt is in life when decisions come up and we don't always know exactly what way to go, which is the right way. What decision should I make? Should I go left? Should I go right? And obviously we go to the Lord in prayer, and sometimes we get an answer, or sometimes we get a clear directed path, and sometimes we don't. But just because we don't doesn't mean that there's not still a way. I believe God does this probably more often than not. And his reasoning is, I believe, just to keep us dependent and keep us close to him and seeking him and learning how to be guided by him, because that's something a lot of us are very far into. But one of the distinguishing attributes, wonderful gifts that God gives us that helps us be able to sort of know that we're moving in the right direction is peace. And the peace of God is our guidance. We know that when we're in these situations, that's why it's so important to learn to recognize the peace of God. And before you begin the journey, be still in the presence of God. But it's a lot of times it's like the suspension. I tell people all the time, they'll come to me, and I have my own stuff too, where it's like, do I do A or do I do B? And I go, well, I don't know, I don't know which one's better for you, but here's what I do. Pick which one seems like the most reasonable option and start walking it out. Start walking it out and be sensitive to the peace. And if you sense that the peace is not there, you'll know and back up and start again. Kind of like the preload washers on this thing. Sometimes you just got to put a few in there and go ride and realize, no, that's not right. And so many times in my life, I've had to back up, say, nope, that wasn't it. Because the cool thing is about the peace of God is that it's not really dependent upon external circumstances. So when you start walking something out, even if things aren't going ideally, even if things aren't just flowing smooth as silk, if you can recognize the peace of God that this is where I want you to be, this is what I want you to be doing, this is the direction I want you to be heading, it sort of brings that confirmation. So it's not really dependent on if things are going smooth or not, because I don't know how many times that I started walking something out and it wasn't really going smooth, but with every step, I just became increasingly confident that this is where God wants me to be, and that's the producer of the peace, is that you know that you're in the will of God, and there's nothing wrong with taking a few steps, realizing I don't think this is right, I don't think this is where I should be, and backing up, pulling the tube back off, and taking a couple washers out and going a different direction. I mean, that's where the grace of God is just there, and I think God is okay with that, because I think that's how He teaches us. I think that's how He leads us. That's how we learn to recognize His voice. I mean, Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice," and that's kind of one of the ways that we learn that. So, I guess just to kind of sum up, guys, don't be afraid to walk something out. But first and foremost, become familiar with the peace of God, what it's like to be in His will, what it's like to be in that fellowship. And when you face those decisions, do I go left or do I go right? Pick one, start walking it out. And I'm also praying the whole time, Lord, if this ain't the one, shut the door. And He's faithful in that. But through doing that over and over and over, I've learned to have sort of a good suspension, if you will, spiritually. I've had my relationship gets stronger. My recognition of His voice gets better. And so, don't be afraid to do that. Don't sit there, whatever you do, don't sit there in paralysis waiting for a beam of light to come down and light the way. Sometimes God does that. Sometimes He don't. Sometimes He wants us to get up and start walking. And kind of like He told Abraham, get up and go, and I'll tell you when you get there. And so, that's just the way it is sometimes. But anyway, guys, I'm going to finish cleaning this bike up and get Andrea serviced. And we're going to get our bike, get them loaded up and get ready to head to Arkansas. Hopefully, Lord willing, I will see you guys next week with another devotion. And we'll keep these things going, because I've been missing doing them. Thank y'all for watching. Thank you for tuning back in and staying with me and being patient. And we'll see you guys next week.